The rain hammered down so hard, it felt like the ocean itself had risen to swallow me. I stood barefoot on the stone steps of the Vega mansion, clutching a battered backpack that sagged with the weight of my few belongings. Behind me, the heavy oak door slammed shut, its echo thundering louder than the storm. 18 years of silence and suspicion collapsed in that single sound. My stepfather's voice had been calm, almost casual, as he told me to get out and never come back. Then the lock clicked, final and cold. I was no longer his son. I was nothing. Or at least that's what he thought. But when lightning split the sky and headlights cut through the sheets of rain, I realized the night wasn't ending. It was just beginning. If this moment stirs something in you, anger, sadness, or maybe even hope, I'd love for you to share it in the comments below. Tell me where you're watching from, whether it's New York, Dallas, or across the ocean. And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe. There are so many truths waiting to be told, and I want you along for every one of them. My name is Adrian Vega. At least that's the name I carried for 18 years. I'm 18 today, old enough to vote, old enough to join the army, old enough apparently to be thrown out like garbage. For as long as I can remember, I've been the other child in Gregory Vega's picture-perfect family. He is a man of polished suits, with practiced smiles, a real estate baron whose empire stretches. To the world, Gregory is charm wrapped in wealth. To me, he has always been an executioner, waiting for the right day to swing his blade. Tonight on my birthday, he finally did. I can still feel the way his hand gripped my shoulder, firm, businesslike, as if he were escorting a stranger out of a boardroom rather than a son out of his home. The marble floor of the foyer gleamed under the chandelier, and the guests had just toasted to family. Then came his announcement. His voice, sharp as glass, carried over the clinking of champagne flutes. This boy is not mine. Gasps followed, but no one moved to help me. Not my mother, whose mascara-streaked tears blurred her face behind the curtains. Not my classmates invited for the spectacle, more than for celebration. And not even Isabella, my half-sister, frozen on the staircase, her lips trembling with a truth she could not defend. When the door closed, I half expected silence. Instead, the storm outside roared louder, as if nature itself wanted to amplify my humiliation. My backpack strap dug into my shoulder, the zipper stuck halfway, spilling a t-shirt into the mud. I bent to pick it up, my fingers shaking from more than the cold. This wasn't just eviction. It was erasure. Gregory had waited until I was legally an adult, until the law could no longer call it cruelty, to strip me of everything, my name, my place, my sense of belonging. Yet even in that cruelty, something inside me refused to break. There's a strange clarity in being unwanted. The weight of pretending falls away. For the first time, I didn't have to earn Gregory's approval because there was none to earn. I could feel the storm washing away the last traces of the boy I had been. What came next, I didn't yet know. But the lights approaching through the rain, the low hum of an engine slowing near the gate, those promised something Gregory never intended a beginning. The headlights outside promised something unknown, but before that moment arrived, I need to take you back inside, back to the dinner table, where the storm had truly begun. Hours earlier, the mansion glowed with chandeliers, and laughter, the smell of roasted lamb, drifting through rooms polished for show. Gregory Vega had insisted on a celebration, a spectacle to honor my 18th birthday. I should have recognized the performance for what it was, not a party, but a stage for an execution. I sat at the long mahogany table, the silverware gleaming like surgical instruments, every guest positioned like jurors. Clara, my mother, moved quietly at Gregory's side, her smile trembling, her hands pale against the crystal glasses she set down. Across from me, Isabella fidgeted with the hem of her dress, her eyes darting toward me with an unease she didn't yet have words for. Gregory rose with deliberate poise, a man accustomed to commanding rooms. His whiskey glass caught the light as he tapped it against a spoon, the sound slicing through conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice deep and steady. "Thank you for joining us tonight. It is not only Adrian's 18th birthday, it is also a day for truth." The room hushed. Forks froze halfway to mouths. My chest tightened as if some invisible hand were pressing against my pulse. He reached inside his table and produced a manila envelope. I knew that envelope long before I saw its contents. Something in the way he held it like evidence in a courtroom told me this was not about family, but about judgment. He opened it slowly, theatrically, drawing out the silence until every breath in the room seemed synchronized to his. "These are DNA test results," Gregory announced. "Conclusive, indisputable. Probability of paternity 0%. His gaze landed on me like a gavel. "This boy is not my son." The words detonated in the air. Gasps rippled across the table, followed by murmurs like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Someone's phone discreetly lifted, recording. I could almost hear the digital click as my humiliation was captured, ready to be broadcast beyond these walls. My mother's fork slipped from her hand and clattered against her plate. She pressed trembling fingers to her lips, mascara already smudging beneath her eyes. For years, she had carried this secret, protecting me, or maybe protecting herself. Either way, the truth had come crashing down in front of neighbors, business partners, and classmates. Isabella rose from her chair, her voice breaking. "Stop it, Dad. He's still my brother." But her words were drowned by Gregory's calm, merciless tone. "I've invested 18 years in a fraud," he declared, lifting his glass as if to toast his own cruelty. "That ends tonight." I sat, frozen heat rising in my face while cold spread through my hands. The chandelier above blurred its crystals, scattering light like shards. Every eye in the room pierced me, weighing me, reducing me to nothing more than a headline waiting to be written. And in that silence, with whispers multiplying and cameras quietly capturing my collapse, I understood this was not a family gathering. This was a trial, and I had just been sentenced. When Gregory's voice finally fell silent, the room didn't explode with protest. It just sagged into whispers, the kind of hushed tones people use when tragedy happens to someone else. I excused myself, though no one asked where I was going, and climbed the staircase to my room. Each step felt heavier, as if I were already carrying the weight of exile. My room had never felt like mine, but that night it was a stranger's place. The trophies on the shelf, the soccer cleats in the closet, the laptop on the desk, all purchased, provided, or permitted by Gregory. His shadow lingered in every corner. Now, with one decree, he had reclaimed it all. I grabbed an old backpack from beneath the bed, its zipper stuck halfway, the fabric frayed from years of school use. I stuffed in jeans, a few shirts, socks, the barest pieces of a life. When my hand reached for the watch Gregory had given me for graduation, his voice cut in from the doorway. "Leave it." Same with the laptop. "They're mine." His presence filled the frame like a verdict. I froze, then unclasped the watch, set it on the desk, and powered down the laptop for the last time. My digital world disappeared in a glowing Apple logo that winked out like a dying star. Behind me, my mother. Clara's face was ashen, her hands trembling as she held something wrapped in a tissue. She slipped past Gregory, pressed it into my palm. A few crumpled bills and a silver bracelet were tarnished. Her voice cracked to a whisper. "This is the only thing that truly belongs to you." Gregory's eyes narrowed, but he didn't stop her. Perhaps pity amused him. Perhaps cruelty was enough for one night. I zipped the backpack, its teeth grinding together like clenched jaws, and slung it over my shoulder. Downstairs, the guests were already filing out their gazes, carefully averted their silence louder than condemnation. Phones buzzed with new uploads, the scandal already traveling faster than I could walk. Near the door, I saw her Elena. My girlfriend, or at least she had been when the night began. Her father's hand gripped her arm firmly, steering her away. She twisted once, eyes meeting mine with an apology she couldn't voice. Then she was gone, swallowed by the departing crowd. I stepped out into the storm. The front gate loomed ahead, its iron bars slick with rain. Each drop stung my skin like needles, but numbness had already set in. The mansion behind me radiated light and warmth, but it wasn't mine, and never had been. At the curb, I stopped. My backpack clung to me, sodden and heavy. My chest was hollow, my gaze empty, as if my entire life had been reduced to the sound of rain on stone. For 18 years, I had fought for a place in that house. Tonight, the fight ended. I had lost everything, or so I believed. I thought the storm had claimed the night, that nothing could break its relentless rhythm against the pavement. But then, through the hiss of rain, I heard it, the low, controlled purr of an engine. Headlights glowed at the far end of the drive, softer, steadier than the frantic flashes of lightning. A black limousine rolled to a stop outside the gates, sleek as a predator, waiting in the dark. For a moment, I thought Gregory had sent someone to finish what humiliation had started. My grip on the backpack tightened. Then the rear window lowered with a quiet hum, revealing not a bodyguard or chauffeur, but a man. He looked directly at me, rain glistening off the iron bars between us. His hair was silver, neatly combed, his suit cut with a precision that made Gregory's Armani look like a cheap disguise. Even in the dim light, I felt the weight of his gaze, not hostile, not pitying, but knowing. "Adrian Cruz," he said, his voice low, yet unmistakably certain. The name hit harder than any thunderclap. Cruz, not Vega. My breath caught, fogging the night air. I had never heard that name attached to me, yet something inside me stirred, like recognition buried deep in blood. I stepped closer, rain soaking through my shoes, my knuckles white around the straps of my pack. "What did you call me?" "Your true name?" the man replied. "It's time you heard it." He pushed the door open and stepped out, utterly unbothered by the downpour. Water sheeted off his shoulders, but his presence seemed untouched, steady as stone against the storm. "My name is Victor Navarro. I've been waiting for this night longer than you can imagine." The words carried an eerie precision, as if rehearsed for years. My pulse quickened. A dozen questions fought to the surface. "Who are you? How do you know me? What do you want?" But only one slipped past my lips. "You knew my father." Victor's eyes softened, though his stance remained unshaken. "I did. More than knew him. He was my closest friend, and he trusted me with a responsibility. To find you, to bring you the truth he could not." The rain pounded harder, but I barely felt it. My mind reeled, twisting through fragments I'd never pieced together. My mother's haunted glances, Gregory's disdain, the silence that had always hung over my childhood, like an unfinished sentence. Victor took a step closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Your father's name was Gabriel Cruz. And what Gregory tore from you tonight was never his to give or take. Everything changes from this moment on." I stood frozen at the gate, the storm raging, my life split open by 7 words. Your true name is Adrian Cruz. What I thought was an ending was in fact the prologue. The storm swallowed Victor's words, but they still rang inside me louder than thunder. Gabriel Cruz. A name that felt both foreign and familiar, like a melody I'd never learned but somehow recognized. I stared at Victor, waiting for him to flinch to reveal this was some cruel trick orchestrated by Gregory. But he didn't. His eyes held steady, and in them I saw no malice, only gravity. We ducked into the limousine, the warmth inside jarring after the freezing rain. Leather seats, faint cologne, the hum of the engine, all too calm for the chaos unraveling in my chest. Victor studied me for a long moment, then leaned forward. Your father was no ordinary man, he said. Gabriel Cruz was a pioneer in renewable energy, a mind decades ahead of his time. He believed technology could heal the planet, and he built his life's work around that belief. I swallowed hard water dripping from my hair onto my clothes. And he's gone. Victor's jaw tightened. 18 years ago, he vanished under circumstances that were never fully explained. Some say it was an accident. Others suspect sabotage. What I know is this: before he disappeared, he prepared for you. He reached into a leather briefcase and withdrew a sealed envelope. The paper yellowed slightly with age. My name, Adrian Cruz, was written across it in bold, steady handwriting. My breath caught. I touched the envelope as if it might dissolve. He wrote this. Victor nodded. On the eve of his last trip. He gave it to me with one instruction: deliver it to his son when he turns 18. Not a day sooner. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, the ink faded, but the words alive with a voice I had never heard, and yet instantly trusted. Son, if you're reading this, it means I could not return. I am sorry for the years we lost, for the birthdays I missed, for the silence you endured. But know this: you were not abandoned. You were planned for, cherished, and protected in ways you may never fully see. Tears. The world is changing, and with it the responsibility I leave you. My research, my patents, my unfinished projects. In them lies both wealth and happiness. Trust Victor. He will guide you. And remember, the day you turn 18, the truth will no longer be hidden. That is when your real life begins. I lowered the letter, my chest burning with 1,000 unspoken questions. My father, a genius, a visionary, had seen this night coming. While Gregory celebrated my exile, Gabriel had scripted my rebirth. The limousine glided through the storm, carrying me away from the mansion that had rejected me. I clutched the letter to my chest, the paper damp with tears and rain, and realized for the first time I was holding proof that I had been wanted all along. I held the letter until my fingers ached, as though gripping it tightly enough might bridge 18 years of silence. Victor let me sit in that fragile stillness for a while, but soon his voice cut through like the low growl of the storm outside. Adrian, there is more you need to know. Gabriel didn't just leave words, he left a legacy. A company. Projects. A fortune. The limousine's interior lights flickered as we passed under street lamps, the glow catching in Victor's silver hair. His eyes didn't leave mine. You are the heir to Cruz Energy, a firm valued in the hundreds of millions. The patents alone could power cities and fund generations. But wealth invites predators, and they're already circling. My chest tightened. Predators. Victor's gaze hardened. Gregory Vega is not finished with you. He thinks you're broken, easy to dismiss. But if he learns the truth that you are Gabriel's son, and that everything your father built is now yours, he will come for it, and he won't come alone. The car slowed in front of a sleek downtown tower, its glass walls reflecting the storm like fractured mirrors. Inside, I was ushered into a conference room where a woman waited. She stood when we entered sharp in a navy suit, her dark hair pinned back, her expression composed, but kind. "This is Lucia Moreno," Victor introduced. "Your father's attorney. She has guarded his estate for nearly 2 decades. Lucia extended her hand. "Adrian, it's an honor. Your father trusted me with his life's work. I've been waiting for this day almost as long as you have." I shook her hand, trying to anchor myself in the moment. Papers lay spread across the table, documents, stamped with seals, financial statements covered in dizzying numbers. Lucia explained them patiently, her voice steady. "Cruise Energy is yours now. But there's a complication. Marcus Black, a former associate of Gregory's, has been attempting to acquire controlling shares. He knows enough to be dangerous." The name tasted bitter before I even understood why. "Who is he?" Victor answered. "A man who profits from weakness. He partnered with Gregory years ago, circling Cruise Energy like a vulture. With Gabriel gone, Marcus thought the company would collapse. He was wrong. But now that you've stepped into the light, he will move faster." I looked down at the signature on the will, Gabriel Cruz, a name that now bound me to more than good. It bound me to responsibility to enemies I had never chosen. Lightning split the skyline outside, illuminating my reflection in the window. For the first time, I didn't see Gregory's cast off. I saw the heir to something vast, something worth fighting for. Victor placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "This is not the end of your exile, Adrian. It is the beginning of a war, and you must decide if you're ready to claim what is rightfully yours." I tightened my grip on the letter in my pocket. My father had prepared me for this moment. Now it was my turn to prepare for them. The moment I stepped into the world of Cruise Energy, I felt the weight of something I couldn't fully grasp. It was power, but not the kind I'd been promised in my childhood. It was heavier, more complicated. It was a legacy fraught with dangers I hadn't yet seen. And now, as I sat across from Lucia and Victor, listening to the evidence of Gregory's crimes, I understood this was a war not just for a company, but for my place in the world. Lucia spread out the documents, her fingers brushing over the incriminating papers. "Gregory has been siphoning funds from Cruise Energy for years. Hidden accounts, falsified reports, misdirected investments. The amount is staggering." She paused, watching me. "It's not just business failure, Adrian. It's fraud." I leaned forward, absorbing every word, the pieces of my life starting to click into place. Gregory had always preached about hard work, about earning everything you had. But behind the polished veneer of success, he had been stealing, manipulating, making deals in the shadows. The irony was suffocating. The man who had spent 18 years teaching me how to earn had been teaching me nothing but lies. Victor's voice broke the silence, low and measured. "We have enough evidence to bring him down, Adrian. But we need your decision. Do you want to press charges? Expose him publicly?" I felt the tension in the room tighten. Everything in me screamed to do it, to drag him into the light and watch him squirm. But the weight of the decision hung like a blade over my head. This wasn't just about my revenge. It was about the legacy Gabriel had left me, about proving I was more than the bastard son Gregory had made me feel I was. As if on cue, the phone in my pocket buzzed. I looked down, seeing Isabella's name on the screen. I stepped away from the table, my heart tightening. "Adrian, you need to know. Things are falling apart here. Mom's talking about leaving, and I don't think she can take much more." The words hung in the air, and I was reminded of something I hadn't let myself think about for too long: my family. Not Gregory, not even Clara, but Isabella, my sister. I walked back into the room, my resolve hardening. "I'll do it," I said to Victor and Lucia. "Expose him. Make sure everyone knows what he's done." That night, the first whispers of Gregory's downfall began. The story broke on the news, and it spread like wildfire. Investors who had once flocked to him for his promises started pulling their funds. His allies deserted him, leaving him like a ship adrift in the storm he had created. I didn't celebrate. But as the world turned against him, I couldn't help but feel something that I hadn't expected: freedom. By morning, Gregory's empire was already in chaos. The rumors about his personal life and about his greed were all anyone could talk about. I wasn't there when the police arrived at the mansion, but I was there when Isabella called. "I'm staying with you, Adrian. I can't be around you. Not after everything." Her voice cracked with everything we had lost. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. The mansion was no longer mine, and Gregory's world, his empire, was crumbling. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel the crushing weight of rejection. The next chapter wasn't about the loss of my name or my past. It was about the future, the legacy Gabriel had left me, one I was finally ready to claim. Victor and Lucia took me to the estate that Gabriel had carefully crafted, a place I had only heard of in fragments. The house sat quietly on the outskirts of the city, its stone walls aged by time, yet its structure stood strong, as if it too had waited for me to return. I stepped across the threshold, feeling the weight of history pressing down on my shoulders, and the silence was almost welcoming. The house felt like it had been holding its breath, waiting for the air it had been promised. Inside, the air smelled of aged wood and the distant trace of cedar. A fireplace crackled softly in the great room, and there, sitting by the fire, was Elena Cruz, my grandmother. Her silver hair framed a face both stern and kind, and her hands, though worn with age, still held the grace of the woman who had seen the world change around her. She didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. As I walked toward her, I could see the unspoken words in her eyes, the relief, the pride, the love she had kept hidden for so long. "Adrian," she said softly, her voice trembling with the weight of years and silence. "I knew you'd come home." I sat down beside her, the years between us suddenly bridging in the warmth of that moment. It wasn't just about the house or the money, it was about family, something I had nearly forgotten in the chaos of my life. "Your father spoke of you often." She continued, her eyes distant as she looked into the flames. "He wanted to build something for you, for the future. But there was always a fear. He knew the world would never leave us alone. That's why he kept his plans hidden. But now it's your turn to carry that vision forward." I nodded, absorbing the truth in her words. My past had been full of betrayal, but now I had a new path. With Gabriel's legacy in my hands, I could finally build something that wasn't just about survival, but about purpose. Over the following weeks, Victor and Lucia guided me through the complexities of running the company. It wasn't easy. There were financial documents to review, plans to finalize, new teams to assemble. But with every decision I made, every conference call, every board meeting, I felt Gabriel's presence beside me. His vision of a greener world, of sustainable energy, of using technology to protect the planet, these weren't just ideas. They were the foundation of a future I could now shape. And every step, every lesson learned brought me closer to who I was meant to be. I was no longer just the abandoned son. I was Adrian Cruz, the man who would fulfill his father's dream. One evening, I stood on the balcony of the estate, the ocean stretching out before me like a living, breathing thing. The wind was strong, salt, and freedom in the air. I looked out at the horizon, the sun sinking low, casting a fiery glow across the water. This was where I had been meant to be all along. The place where I could protect what mattered most, my family, my father's legacy, the future. I would fight for this. I would protect it with everything I had. And one day, I would stand proud, knowing I had fulfilled the promise Gabriel made before he left. With the crashing waves below and the vast world ahead of me, I understood what he had meant. The real inheritance was not the money, but the power to make a difference. And now the journey had truly begun.